Hello and welcome. I am doing something a little different tonight, which is to do a timed exercise. The goal tonight is actually to develop and design a card game that simulates some of the dungeon crawling or dungeon diving mechanics that you see in a lot of video games. I realize this is actually something people have already done. I stumbled across a few variations of a dungeon diving card game on YouTube. They seemed pretty interesting, and the idea caught my attention as something that would be fun for me to try to do to not only put a different spin on the idea, but as a way to more easily or more deeply familiarize myself with some dungeon crawling mechanics, maybe get some ideas for things I can incorporate into my latest novel. So, that being said, I've got a deck of cards before me. I spent more minutes than I'd like to admit trying to rig up a decent camera system, but in the end, we're going to just stick with the basics here. And I'll record some notes here on this Google Doc as we're going through the game. So, obviously, the idea, as I said, is to simulate a dungeon diving game. So we want some combination of combat, of mechanics that you can play with a regular deck of cards. So this is not some specific fancy version. This is just your standard 52 card deck. Maybe we can say 54 if we find a use for the jokers. And my goal, on top of kind of the basics, is to offer some interesting flexibility within a very simple system. So I want to create a structure for this game that is very simple. You can learn it very easily, but it also allows for some creativity, some character in the player, for the player to be able to play with their own style. But like I said, for it to be very simple. I don't want this to be something where it takes 30 minutes for somebody to describe how to play. I want there to be a few core rules that govern the gaming experience and allow it to be fun and flexible. I've thought about this a little bit, and I know that I want there to be a few different classes. So I watched one YouTube video of a version of a dungeon crawling card game. And if I'm remembering correctly, that version did not have classes. You simply played kind of as a character, but there was nothing specifically important about your character. So I want to start by just creating a very basic class system, and I think that will give kind of some flavor, some interest to the experience. So I'm getting some cards out here. I think the easiest way to differentiate the classes would be by suit. So we have clubs, spades, hearts, and diamonds, our four suits. So we need four classes. I will admit I've already thought about that just a bit and known that's the way I want to go. So we're not coming into this completely blind, but let's make a note of this. Classes determined by suit. And then we've got our clubs, spades, hearts, and diamonds. So in terms of classes, obviously we need a knight. I'd like an archer. Wizard should be in there. And probably for hearts it would be a healer of some kind. Those are the most basic variations that come to class. And as I'm thinking about which suit goes with what, clubs makes a lot of sense for knights. A club could be like a literal melee weapon. So I think that fits. It's also a black suit, which I think fits more with the knight than red. Knights wearing dark armor, I think that fits in. Spades, a spade almost looks like an arrow, so I think that fits well with the archer. Hearts, obviously that's going to be the healer. Depending on what sort of mechanics we lay out, I could easily see the healer and the wizard being the same or becoming the same as the game goes on. So we'll we'll keep that note in there. But for the time being, I think let's leave wizard as diamonds. The only other classes that would come to mind for this could be something like a rogue or like a dexterity based fighting class. Other than the archer, more of like a melee. But the reason these four kind of came to mind at first for me is that knight, that obviously fills your tank role. It's an up close melee physical. Archer is ranged physical. Wizard would be ranged magical. And then healer would be obviously healing. So those are four slightly different, or I should say very different roles. And if we can create a structure that creates some importance for each of those characteristics we just mentioned, that's also simple, then I think that's what we're going for. So this is the part where we put on our thinking caps. I've been playing a game called Slice and Dice quite a bit lately. It's a mobile game, and it's actually a blast. I've been having a ton of fun. It's super simple mechanically, but it's got a huge amount of depth to the gameplay, to some of the mechanics that are I shouldn't say mechanics, I should say features, or variables that it can introduce. So I think I want to try to take some of my favorite things from that and merge it into this idea of a card game. And obviously, just in case I didn't say it already, the goal here is to do this within an hour. So I think putting that barrier in place is helpful. Can keep me on track, keep me going, and just adds a little bit of extra fun. So we've got four classes. Let's create our gameplay loop. I guess I better spell this correctly. I've got a lot going on here on the desk. There's a microphone, there's cards, there's a mouse, there's a keyboard, so I may be clanking around a little bit as I get my feet under me here. So gameplay loop, we're going to choose classes. So what I know I want, and this goes back to things like Battle Frontier from Pokemon Emerald, is I want there to be a certain selection of classes the player can choose from, and then they need to make they need to pull a certain number of classes from the larger pool. So let's say, for example, just going with the Pokemon Emerald thing, the player is presented with 5 class options. So maybe it's Knight, Archer, Healer, Wizard, and they have to choose 3. So what that does is it gives the player enough control to realistically, choose a party composition that they want to play and that they think is going to be good. But it doesn't give enough options that the player can always choose what they want or always choose a really good composition. So I think that idea is a nice middle ground that I want to do here. Since we have 4 classes, I think we do want to have 4 characters the player can choose. So it's going to be 4 out of something. 7 is a nice number. 5 is also, well, no, I should say giving the character 5 options is definitely too limited. 6 feels a little bit weird. I think 7 is fine. And giving 7 means you could potentially have, let's say, how does the math work out there? You could have actually 4 of the same class, which is, in my mind, in terms of thinking about variations, about customizations, being able to actually choose a composition entirely of the same class is perfect. I want that to be available to the player. And having 7 options means you're probably allowed or able to choose a balanced comp with 1 of each, but not always. It's not, it's probable, but it's not 100%. So I think giving 7 options is good. Let's do something kind of interesting here and say, keep track of all of the cards in the deck. So let's say 52, or we could say 54. So we're taking away 7 for, let me write this out maybe and I'll try and reframe it a little more clearly. So I've got an idea here. I think this is interesting. This is new. We're starting with the deck, and the game should end when the last card is, let's say, defeated or used. So what this means is we want to keep track of each card. So we're choosing 4 off the bat for our classes, and there's another 3. So my idea is, as we unearth another mechanic, let's use these 3 cards for that. And what I like about that, actually what I really like about that now that I'm thinking about it, is let's say you've got 7 options for your class. A, B, C, D are your best choices if you're just looking at what is the best comp that you want to play. But let's say D would be a great card to go into this bucket for whatever mechanic these 3 extra cards fill. So by using these other 3 from the 7, by using these other 3 for something, hopefully something important, that means maybe sometimes it's not best to just choose a balanced comp or to choose whatever your favorite play style is. Maybe it's actually worth it to leave one of those classes in this extra bucket for it to benefit you somehow, in a different way later on. So I think that's interesting. It makes everything feel a little bit more valuable. One more thing I do want to add in here is like a preface or a prologue, something to step in front of this choose class. Because if I'm thinking about this, let's say you play the game once, you go with a balanced comp and you're like, yep, that works. The next time you play, you probably want to just do the same thing. You want to get a balanced comp. What I like about games like Slice and Dice or Slay the Spire is they give you a certain perk or benefit or boost before the game actually begins. So going into it, let's say for Slay the Spire, if we're going to say you get a relic that, boy, it's been a while since I played that one. You get a relic called Black Star, that gives you bonus relics when you defeat elites. So all of a sudden okay, I'm going to be hunting elite enemies this playthrough. So by getting something that shoehorns your playstyle a little bit before you even choose your classes, that incentivizes you to choose something different than what you would consider your favorite every time. So we need some kind of a relic system. So how do we do that? Let's stick with these 7. Yeah, let's stick with these 7. So the first, this is where we get into wanting it to be simple, but also wanting it to be, I should say, we're trying to find that balance between the game being easily learnable, but also kind of robust and have a system of its own. So the thought that came to mind, and we may have to abbreviate this somehow, is the first of the 7 cards is a modifier. Suit equals modifier, number equals modifier. So what this would mean is the first of your 7 cards, both its suit and number would mean something and would affect the sort of the course of the game. So what I'm thinking, okay, again, we don't want this to be overly complicated. So what we need is a very basic rule that is sort of easily understood. So an option would be the number on that card universally does something for the other cards of that number. This would be pretty easy. So let's say we flipped over a 4 of diamonds. That's what I've got. That's what I've got here as my first card. All the 4s in the deck would do something special. Next card here is an 8. If this was my first card, all the 8s would do something special, right? The idea, that's a basic idea. I think that's pretty easy. We just need to figure out what that means, or I should say what the special something would be. Other options, let's see. We could do the same thing with suits. That suit does something special. All right, so now we've got the same idea. We're double dipping with that idea, which is good. That's, leading into our simplicity idea. Especially if we can say that these are the same special something. So as a basic example, a basic example would be times 2 power. So now you're looking, all of a sudden you're looking for, let's say, diamonds. You're looking for wizards, because in this playthrough, wizards do double damage. Now that's obviously a little overpowered. That's not what we want to do, but I think you can see kind of the basic idea here. So I'm going to highlight these. We'll come back to them. And we'll see if I can highlight. I've got a special view here in what's this guy? All right. I've got a special view here in Google Drive or in Google Docs, and I don't know if it is going to want to let me highlight easily without jumping out of here. So we'll just come back. We'll change that bonus, but if our idea is the number and the suit become more important and affect the mechanics of the game, I think that's good. And hopefully as we get into some mechanics, we can sort of zoom in on what these bonuses or factors, modifiers should be. All right, so we've we're getting started here. We begin the game. Our first card is for our modifiers. We lose 4 for classes, and then 4 for classes. And then we lose 2 for bonus something. All right. So now we have to get into how this actually works. So we got options here. In some of the, or I should say in the video I saw, the player deals out 4 cards, and those are the enemies or the items in the room. And in that game, you either deal out a weapon that your character picks up and attacks the enemy, or there's actually a potential for like a health potion or something that heals you. So basically, you keep dealing out 4 cards. Some of them are enemies, some are weapons, and some are healing, and you just kind of let the game play that way. I think that's interesting. What I want to do is incorporate something a little bit more dynamic, or a little bit more spatial than what I've seen so far. So what that could mean is like dealing out cards in a square. So rather than just 4 cards in a row, 4 cards in a square, and we allow our characters to we allow their positions on the square to mean something. So like right now I dealt out 4 cards. We've got 3 diamonds and a club out here. We've got some different numbers. What I'm wondering is, let's see here. I kind of like the idea of, well, this is going to sound a little contradictory, either having like a preset structure that the character, or I should say the player, needs to play their characters in. So if the enemies are in a square pattern, maybe the player kind of completes the diamond, so top, bottom, and sides. And or the player is able to choose specific places to play their cards. So what are we trying to do here? What we want to do is create opportunities to use the classes, to use their specific characteristics, right? That's the whole point. You don't want 4 knights that are just stat sticks that block a certain amount of damage, deal a certain amount of damage, and it just becomes a numbers game. What you want is the player to be able to strategically use their knight to, to soak up damage, to strategically put their archer somewhere so that they can avoid damage and deal ranged damage. Those are the sort of things that you want. So we need to create kind of a framework that allows that to happen. So how do we do that? Let's think about it like this. All right, we're going to go back from the square structure of the enemies back to a line, okay? So let's assume these are 4 enemies. And then we'll have our characters laid out. How do we want to do that? Let's see. So the most basic would be we lay out our 4 characters in any order we want. So you'd probably want a knight in the front, and then maybe a healer and a wizard and an archer. And then that can allow. I mean, this is like what's that game with the animals? Shoot, animal. Boy, that's gonna bug me. Yeah, I'm blanking on it, but it's got like a capybara as the thumbnail, and you're doing a turn-based combat in which the first animal on your team is what is basically tanking damage, and everybody else is like dealing damage to the other team, and it's last one standing wins. It's not Animal Crossing. Bummer. Don't know if I'm going to remember that. So this could be a card-based version, essentially, of that with a class system. That kind of steals my thunder. I don't want to do that. How about we do something different? Let's say, okay, we've got kind of 2 ways to go here. I'm thinking so let's say the player can choose their structure however they want, their card structure. So they could do 4 cards in a row, meaning that only the first card would take damage from an enemy. So, or they could do 4 in the front line. They could do 2 and 2. They could do 3 and 1. So we could say that is up to the player. We could say for enemies that they're going to have the same class structure, and if they have a knight, it automatically goes in front. And then in terms of archer, wizards, and healers, they are ordered in the order that they're drawn. So I think that might be might sound a little complicated without seeing the cards that I've got in front of me, but I think we're moving closer to that structure I've been looking for. I really like the idea of giving the character their own chance to structure their classes or their characters in the way they want. They could do all 4 in a row where they've got a knight and they're just trying to protect the other 3 really well, or they're doing something different. And I'm seeing a thread here that I think can help tie this together. So first, let's record a few of these notes. Okay, before the character lays out their cards, we need to distribute enemies. we'll call these ranks. So the knights go in first rank, wizards, healers, and archers filter into ranks after knights, if knights are available. Filter into ranks after knights in order that they're drawn. Okay, so the enemy has been distributed. Next player distributes classes. They have total choice of how classes are formatted, or not formatted, but arranged. How about that? Okay, so I think at this point it sounds relatively, I should say, similar to that animal game that is unnamed and I cannot remember. What is going to help tie this together and make it more interesting is to give a rank-based boost. So what this means is the first card in rank 1, typically you'd assume this would be the knight, whatever card is in that place gets a certain bonus. Okay, so we'll come up with something for that, and then for ranks 2 and 3 and 4. And what I want to happen is for there to be some incentive that, maybe depending on the enemy composition you have, don't just put your knight in the front. Maybe it makes sense to put them in rank 3 or 4 or 2. I don't want this to be like a plug and play, okay, every time I'm going to go knight, healer, wizard, archer, or whatever. I want there to be some consideration that has to happen when you see how the enemy is structured, what their rank boosts are giving them, and reacting to that as the player. So let's come up with those. I'll just spitball a few off the top of the head. First rank, that's probably something related to tanking. We could do double health, extra shield, regen. Those would kind of be the 3 fields that would come to mind. Second rank, let's get these written out. All right. Okay, so what makes the most sense here? Second rank, third rank, fourth rank. First was pretty obvious. If we're thinking about a real combat situation, there's a variety of tactical formations. You're thinking about like a shield wall. Somebody holds the shield, somebody pokes through with a spear. I think the second rank we want to give some kind of damage boost. We could say, we could say double damage, +1 range. I think +1 range is interesting. Maybe let's stick with that right now. Fourth rank, third rank. What's difficult here is I don't want to try associating these with classes. In other words, I don't want to come up with a boost for the third rank that only really benefits, say, the healer. Okay, because then we're going back to that idea of auto playing and just filling your characters in the same sequence every time. So giving +1 range, I think that is really interesting. That can give, different characters a certain flexibility, which is very good. So that's ideal. Third rank. Let's see here. I've got an idea. I don't know if this is going to be helpful or good as we cross over the 30 minute mark. How to say this? Ability affects all allies. So I'm wondering, and I've got a sense this might go against the simplicity idea, but if we had something in the third rank that they could affect all the allies somehow, this would be like a support ability. So for the knight, it could be a shield. For the archer, it could be I don't know, something. For the healer, it could be healing everybody rather than one specific thing. For the wizard, it could be +1 damage. You know, not sure about the archer, but having that could be interesting. I think that, what does that do? That incentivizes you to put a character there that you think you're going to need their support boost. Or we could say, like, activates support ability. Is this getting too complicated? Let's leave it for now. Okay, I feel like I'm ironing this in a little bit. +1 range. Oh, and here's another thing, right? The odds of the odds of you having all 4 characters in a row mean that you've chosen to put all of them there. So I think almost what we can do is, and we're already doing this, but allowing these bonuses to lean into different playstyles, not only sequentially but by themselves, which is very difficult. But what made me think of that thought was second rank +1 range. So you could have 2 groups of first rank, second rank. So you could split your 4 cards into 2, groups of 2, which would give you 2 classes that have this +1 range. Meaning you could essentially, let's say they've got a healer in their second slot. You could essentially double team their healer with whatever archer or even a knight or whatever. You could immediately take out their healer like level 1 or turn 1. So if you saw that they had a healer in their second rank, maybe instead of going for the 4 rank squad, you go for 2 2s, and then that allows you to get that jump right off the bat. So I think that's good. If you're going into third rank, going up to third rank, yeah, I think we want to save this 4th rank for supportability, because that sounds really strong if we go with like some of the ideas I mentioned earlier. So I think we want to save that for the player needing to do all 4 in order to unlock that. So what do we want for third rank? We've got a defensive-based boost. We've got a ranged-based boost. A very flexible one. This could be damage. It could be +1 damage. I think that's fine. It's pretty basic, but I think we can go with it maybe. let's see. Yeah, the interesting thing is we're on the clock here, so we can't necessarily just come back to this later. So I think let's leave that for now with that in mind. Let's fill out these support abilities quick. +1 health. This could be max health. This could be... Oh, because this is going to happen... I suppose it only happens once. Okay, so +1. We don't really have a difference between health and shield, do we? Oh, we'll just say health. We can split this later. Healer can be +1 regen. That sounds pretty strong. It's feeling a little imbalanced to me right now, but archer, mage, +1 damage. Archer giving, oh, here we go, +1 range for the archer as their support ability. That's really good because then you could go put somebody in 2nd rank, archer in 4th rank, and now you've got somebody that not only has the 2nd rank +1 range boost, but also the archer. So now you're hitting all the way back to like the third rank with this person, which is pretty interesting. Knight and healer, this doesn't feel great. I don't really like the idea of regen either. That's a little too hard to keep track of. So let's switch this back to health. And what would the knight do? We've already got range, damage, health. What is this knight doing back here? You kind of want the knight's support thing to, right, because the knight wants to be in the 1st rank typically, almost always. So to put it all the way back in the 4th rank where it can't protect anybody and it can't damage, I feel like you want a really good reason to put it back there. So like the first thing that would come to mind for me is like +1 damage and health per turn. That's getting a little hard to calculate though for what I want. So we could say ×2, let's say double health. Oh, but that's our rank 1. Let's go for rank 1. Something different. Like a +1 health. How about that? Okay, +1 health. +1 range, +1 damage. Okay, so double health, that's like huge, but it means you're basically not doing anything until your squad gets there. Or sorry, until, you know, the other folks in your squad have gotten wiped. So I think that's interesting. We've got our win condition, which is to basically defeat the last enemy. We've got these two things as well. These two cards from our original 7. Let's see here. What could these control? I like the idea of using these before we actually get into the combat. We're down to 20 minutes. Here we go. All right, other 2 cards. These could determine, like, I was gonna say like base health, but that doesn't seem right. Let's see. So if I had these 7 cards, I choose my class. What does the first one do? We said modifier and suit. Okay. So suit, we're just gonna simplify this further. Let's see. So the clubs we said is a +1. Maybe let me go through these first. +1 range, +1 health. And this is the sort of thing I'm looking for when I'm talking about simplicity, because we're using the same exact things in terms of the suit perk with the rank perk, or these support abilities. So this gives the player less things they need to remember. Actually, let's do this. +1 shield. Oh, but that's going to make clubs really strong here if I do that. When I say shield, I'm thinking of like a shield that comes up each turn, which over the course of many turns would be much stronger than just getting a flat +1 health. Although your health can be regenerated, or can be healed by a healer, so that's something. Okay, so that gives us our suit bonus. The number, what does the number do? We could do like a greater than less than thing, where if it's under 10, over 10, it's one of two things. That simplifies it a little bit. Or we could just get rid of that. Let's try that first. So now when you get your first card, you're just looking at the suit. And the suit is going to determine a global perk that does something for your squad. I suppose because the enemy isn't getting that, maybe we want more than 4 enemies. Oh, how does that work though with our 4 rank system here? We could say there are 7 enemies. Is that completely crazy? Yeah, this is getting interesting. I guess by interesting, I'm meaning tricky. I think I started with this, these other 2 cards, and I was going to try and figure out what they did. Then we got waylaid a little bit up here with the perks. So items could be a thing. We could say, this is getting a little clunky. I was going to say the extra 2 could do these things as well, but they're only active for a certain unit. I think that's kind of interesting. The actual logistics of, like, say maybe you put these 2 bonus cards under the class that they're active for. That feels a little clunky to me, but the counter to that is that we're triple dipping now in these mechanics, which I think is interesting. Is good, I should say. All right. So what that allows the player to do is choose if they want to double boost a specific character with one of these things. So you could sort of go all in on a really strong whatever. Let's say your playstyle, maybe first card is a knight, or I should say club. So you're getting 1 shield per turn. Then you draw a you get your 7 options. You choose a knight as one of those, and then for your other 2 cards, maybe you get like, +1 damage and, one of these or whatever. All of a sudden you're like, hey, I'm going to throw my knight in the 4th rank, because then it's going to get +1 shield every turn. It's going to get +1 from the relic, and it's going to get, what did we say, +1 damage and another +1 shield. So this thing is like almost unbeatable, So you're tunneling into that type of a play style, or you use these cards to balance your team out a little bit more and give you some more flexibility. I think that's neat. While we're here, let's say can be swapped between battles. So that gives a little more flexibility, a little more creativity. All right, so we're good there. We've used all these cards up. We're getting under 15 minutes. Now I think what we want to do is figure out some of the metrics. So we've got what happens to the base metrics, but we still need to figure out the base. So we could say, and I want to keep the numbers small. I don't want this to be a calculator game. So let's go up here to these guys and give them a armor or a health and damage, or let's say power. So I don't need to type this quite as much. So we'll fill these out. So health, the knight needs more. Let's give it 3. Maybe everybody else can have 2, 2, 2. I kind of like power of 1 for everybody. What does that do for the wizard? The wizard probably deserves 2. I think that's fair. Super strong wizard fella. Maybe let's go 4 for the knight, 4 for health, because I don't want I just feel like that would work better. And then the archer naturally gets a range of 2. So I think that's good. Everybody else's range is 1. The healer can heal 2. Is that fair? Heal 2. Not a lot of time for balance testing here, that's for sure. But the knight has got 5 points total with health heavily skewed. Archer's got 5 points with the range. I guess we're not counting the knight's range of 1, but if I take a step back and approach this again, I would say the knight's skewed toward health, archer toward range, healer with kind of a balanced split. It's got a little more power than normal, but that power is only for healing. And the wizard has bonus damage, so skewed towards damage. So I think that's fair. Maybe that's a little hard to get, to understand, right? We're trying to keep this very simple. So if you were a new player coming to this, somebody would need to tell you these. And one of the benefits of the card game I saw on YouTube was that these values were essentially pulled from the numbers on the cards. So they were self-evident, which is nice, but I don't want RNG to have that heavy of a role. So I think for now, let's leave it. If I can have a better idea about how to use the numbers from the cards, that would be nice. But I think right now, let's stick with this. So we're in kind of the final 10 minutes here. We're getting over there. We've got our classes figured out. We've got their stats. We've got the initial setup figured out. We know how the ranks mechanic functions. Now we just need to get into the combat. So the thing that I'm thinking about is there's the effect of these ranks. I think it's great to have the player do that. But but I don't know if I want them having to calculate that for enemies too, right? That's like double. So either we have to give the enemies more units to kind of even things out, give them more, overall power, or we just say, yep, enemies do this too, and enemies do this too. So you just have to figure out whatever their ranks are doing. I'm a little bit inclined to, let's see. I was going to say not do it, because when you give an enemy unit +1 range, all of a sudden now they have 2 choices of where they can attack. I suppose that's already true of the archer. And what we don't really want the player to do is have to make those type of decisions for the opponent, because now all of a sudden you can strategically tank their you can strategically tank their turn to not take out like your first rank person or whatever. So we could get around that and say we don't really have like a general rules section. That's fine. Just add it under here. Must attack at range while available. So this would mean, as an archer, you always have to attack their second rank person unless you've got some kind of boost active. I kind of like that. I think that's fair. That will whittle down the opponent's options to only attacking 1 unit still. I think that's fine. It sounds kind of limiting, but by saying units always have to attack at their range, meaning either the first unit on the enemy team, the second, the third, whatever it is, that means maybe you need to strategically put an archer in the 4th spot so that your whole team gets +1 range, so that all of a sudden everybody's hitting their second unit troop, which is what you really want to take out. So I think that's fine. That works in my mind. So now we could go back to giving the enemy the rank system, which simplifies something a little bit. So it's 4 player classes versus 4 enemy classes. And they're filtering into ranks like we talked about earlier, where if they have a knight, it automatically goes in the front, and everybody else filters in behind. Yep, that sounds good. So then we've got health figured out. I suppose enemies would have the same health. That sounds fine to me. Or like the same stats. Okay. So now we would play around. It seems like, let's see, because the enemy is randomly distributed, the player gets to choose. I mean, the player should always have an advantage, right? So how do we handicap the player to make the challenge, to make a real challenge? So options, we could pull the dice and slice thing, which is if your character dies during one battle, the next one they start at half health. That's an option. Excuse me. That kind of leads to a snowball type thing. I think that is possible. Possibly what we could do to create a challenge. That makes the healer much more important. Ooh, I suppose what we also need to do is figure out if this is turn-based or team-based. We are under 5 minutes. What are some of the ups and downs? If it's turn-based, where each player, we could go like rank by rank, your rank 1, their rank 1. I feel like it does slow down things a little bit, because all of a sudden now as the player you're bouncing back and forth, you're trying to remember what the ranks do. If you just did your whole squad first, which is the slice and dice model, you're gonna have a big advantage because you should be able to really knock out, one of their people right off the bat potentially. So, and this is looking more like slice and dice with these two mechanics, which I don't love mimicking that, but I think it could work here. Let me put it down and we'll see how it looks here. Your side attacks first, then all enemy side. So one upside of this is it allows you to decide if you want to be an aggressive team or more of a healing based team, because the healer, the first round, that your healer can do nothing in this model, right? Everybody's at full health, although I suppose they could have fainted the previous battle, so that's going to nullify this point a bit. But it may incentivize you to say, hey, I don't really want a healer because I just want to strike first and I want to get ahead in that first turn. So I think that's fine. So looking at everything we've got here, all the kind of the base stats are figured out, the ranks are figured out, the initial modifiers and bonuses are figured out, and we've got our basic loop, including how the enemies are sequenced. So it's that 4 against 4, which is not necessarily what I wanted to do, but I like that there's some importance to the order of the 4, and it's not just as basic as what I've seen in other versions of this. So what do we do now? We've got 5, 7. We're down to boy, math is a little bit tough at this hour. We're down to 45 or 47, depending on what we go from. Let's say it's 40. Let's see. Neither one is divisible by 4 nicely. What about if we had one joker? That's 53. Minus 7 down to 46. Still not divisible by 4. What I really like is like a joker to be the final boss. Don't know if we're going to have that. But let's say we keep battling 4s. Might have to speed this up here a little bit. It's going to be a lot of action this last minute, I guess. Keep battling 4s. Final boss is Joker, which has all rank bonuses. So the last battle, we have no scaling built in, which is a little bit unfortunate. Final battle is 4 enemies plus Joker, which has all rank bonuses on it. Look at our stats here. It's going to have 5 health, and we'll just still say 2 power. Self shield, that's too complicated. We'll just stick with 5 health, and boy, that's really tough. All right, 5 health, 2 power. We're down to 20 seconds. The numbers don't quite work out. I would have loved if we really nicely would have gotten through all of the numbers, or all of the cards really evenly. If I had a few more seconds, I think I'd try to figure out how to make that work, but we've got the overall structure, and I think that's pretty good for an hour. Thanks.